Greetings everybody, it's Rob from the Sage Tower, and we are here with another Pathfinder 2nd edition video. This one is going to be a bit of an interesting one. For those who may have seen on the channel, about a year or so ago, I ran through the Age of Ashes campaign. Took probably, I would say, close to 2 years of a campaign, from book 1 all the way through book 6. So I played through it. It was our first adventure path into E that we ran with me and my group. We did run some Starfinder campaigns previously to that, so the group goes kind of a bit well together before that. That being said, this video is not about that specific playthrough, but instead of the Age of Ashes campaign as a whole. So what I'm going to be doing in this video, I'm going to be ranking the 6 books that make up the Age of Ashes campaign. So before we get into that, as always, if you do like Pathfinder content, if you like tabletop content or board game content, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. It helps a lot. And the more subscribers, the bigger the channel can become, the more content I can make for you guys to enjoy. So without further ado, let us begin. Alright, so in number 6, the bottom book, I'm going to put that as book 4, Fires of the Haunted City. Now the reason why I'm putting Fires of the Haunted City as the bottom book, and this is something that I have talked about a bit, like off camera and stuff with people, and that is the book 4, book 5 usually is what I like to call the fluff book in the 6-book series. It's usually kind of to fill out the space because they have to make these campaigns stretch, especially when they're doing these now from level 1 to level 20. So because of that, they have to kind of pad it a little bit. And I always feel like book 4 or book 5 in these campaigns kind of goes off a bit. What I mean by this is like the campaign has this kind of a vibe, and then once you get to about book 4, book 5, it says, okay, but first, let's go over here. And you go, wait, what? This part seems so odd. And it does like connect with the story. It's not like completely off, but it feels weird. One clear example that I always thought of was in Curse of Crimson Throne, a 1E adventure, that the first 3 books are kind of set in Corvosa in the main city, and then you go off into the desert for a book to find information to go get this MacGuffin. So it's like it's a bit of an odd change of pace. Now, this one is similar. It does have the same like feel of, going to a place as you do in this campaign. The difference, however, is it's a very sloggy book. You get there, the threat isn't obvious right off the bat. It's kind of like this dwarven city in the Darklands. It kind of has this very much like you're trying to figure out what's happening. You're trying to influence the council, but you don't know if you should be influencing the council. And you're just kind of like trying to piece together enough pieces to figure out that the Triad is involved here. A lot of the backstory is kind of also a bit lost to the players, I feel like. The whole, making the deal with the Shumeriks and stuff just kind of seems a bit lost unless they really dig deep into it. The final bit of the battle, the book, when you go into like the actual cave and stuff, is okay, and there's some fun encounters over at the temple, but a lot of it, the first half just really drags me. I just felt like it was really, really slow of a book, and it was one of the books I struggled to run through. And I think my group struggled as well just to like really get into it. And I felt like that's a big issue for this book. Number 5, the 5th one I would say is book 3, Tomorrow Must Burn. This one isn't as bad. This one takes place in Kintargo, and it has some interesting places. It's a good kind of like capstone to the first 3 books and kind of the little story going on there with the Triad. And the quarry has some fun parts to it. My gripes with this book personally as a GM is a few parts. The first part is I feel like the things you do in Kintargo or just kind of bland. They just don't really work well. As well as there's a lot of cool stuff in Cantargo, but a lot of it just kind of like skims close enough to be interesting and useful, and the rest of it just kind of is a waste. You have a cool NPC who's part of the Bellflower network. That's cool. You have the players could become a Bellflower agent. Kind of helpful, maybe, but half of the skills don't really aren't that useful in combat in this situation. You have this other NPC who kind of, after the book is over, teaches them some other techniques. Could be useful. Some of them, maybe. Again, it's not the greatest thing. You have a little Easter egg from like the Hell's Rebels kind of adventure packs, and those that could be fun for those who have played those old 1E adventure packs. But unless you ran them as a GM and stuff, you know, just another NPC to you. The last part that kind of really drives me a bit crazy is, and this would be a bit of a spoiler, the stone scale quarry. I don't know who made this, but the map for this, first of all, the map for this isn't designed to be practical by any sense. The scale of the map is just too big. So what you have to do is you have to essentially compartmentalize the quarry. What I mean by this is you have to have one map for like the main section, and you have to have other maps for the small section, even though technically these small sections can all be accessed from the main section, and if a battle breaks out in the main section, these small sections can actually interact and attack those in the main section. It's a bit of complicated. There are some cool fights. The last battle is, on paper, the last battle is really cool. You can do tons of damage. Interesting mechanic, but the mechanic can automatically turn from being really cool to being mind-numbingly painful for a GM to manage by acts. Because if your players counter the mechanic using a spell, those of you who have ran book 3, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll give you a hint. It involves a wall that could be made out of a really hard substance, maybe stone. A well-placed wall of stone in that last encounter turns what could be a fun little clock on the encounter to how fast does water fill up a room, really? You know? And that becomes a whole mess. But overall, it's not as bad as book 4. Let's put it that way. Number 4. Number 4 is the original Hell Knight Hill itself, book number 1. Now, book 1s are always very tricky. It's low level, usually level 1 to level 4. So as a result of that, you don't usually get a lot in terms of stuff to do. And this one is kind of similar, I will say. The first part is a bit weak. There's not much really going on. Still, the All-Terrain is alright. I'll say in general, it's not a bad. My only downside to this, and this is kind of my own personal pet peeve, a lot of book 1s don't have what I consider like a proper dungeon in the book 1, and it really doesn't. Yes, you have Citadel All-Terrain kind of as the dungeon in this book, I guess, and you have a cool NPC in Alec who can travel with the party. Unfortunately, you have to kind of, after book 1, if your players stick with Alec, you have to essentially make up the rest of his story. He kind of like does his own thing, but like, he never really becomes useful after that. And the first part is kind of sets up the whole campaign, which is what it's supposed to do. But as a whole, book 1 just kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't hit as good as some of the other books. But it's not. But it's at least concise enough to set up and tell the story. That's what I have to say for that one. Alright, here we go. Top 3. And this one might be a bit surprising, as you may have expected it low on the list. That is book 2, Cult of the Cinder. Now I know, those of you who have played this book are going to probably say the first thing that comes to mind. Why are you liking a book that has a hex crawl in it. That's actually one of the reasons I like this book. You don't see much hex crawl in these adventures. And I feel like it's done in a way that it's actually not bad. It's like, I did the hex crawl. I felt like overall, it actually was pretty smooth. The only thing that I would have liked better was maybe better mechanics in terms of the tracking parties that would track the players. Otherwise, everything is pretty much set up. The directions are a bit wonky. What the players have to do, I will give them credit for that. But you have a good social section in the Elvis village. You have a really cool hex crawl with different counters of different types, from creatures to interesting NPCs to doing the actual mission. One thing I like as well is early on in the book, you face an enemy that's pretty hard for the players. And then by the end of the book, you face like 2 or 3 of them at the same time, showing how the players have leveled up and progressed enough to deal with the threat. Is a really cool way to make the players feel stronger. There are some tough fights. The mines can be a bit dangerous if your players walk over there too early. Thankfully, there's a barrier protecting the final place, which has a really cool location for the encounter. It's a really cool map design. It's a really cool situation. And I feel like it's a pretty good battle. And it's in the Wenge Expanse. So being able to set in the jungle, a place you don't really get to explore that much I think is really good. I mean, can't say anything about that one. So, book 2, in spot number 3, Cult of the Cinders. All right, here we go. Number 2, 2 left. If you're keeping score at home, you know at least the 2 are. And for me, number 2 is gonna be book 5, Against the Scarlet Triad. So the reason for this is a lot of the issues I have with book 4, book 5 does better and fixes them. Book 4 has a mechanic that essentially you have to influence the council somehow, and it's a bit messy how to do it. Book 5 does it cleaner, more efficiently, and more clearly explains it to the group. These are the people you have to deal with. These people run this person runs this. If you talk to them, they have tasks, and so forth. You know you have your goal in mind. It's a clear destination. It's set in Katapesh, another cool location to have. It has a really cool end to it with the Red Pyramid as well, which I feel like you could actually end the campaign at book 5. If you get rid of the underlying elements that lead into book 6, book 5 could end the campaign. It's a really good stopping point. It's really good standing up against the Triad. Again, the name of the book is Against the Scarlet Triad, so it makes sense. But I think it's a really solid book. I enjoyed running through book 5. It had some good encounters, had some interesting encounters, and like I said, anything that book 4 I had issues with, book 5 fixes completely. Alright, number 1. So, at this point, it should be pretty obvious what number 1 is. That is book 6, Broken Promise. Now, the reason why I like this book is, as a GM, this book is just juicy. Like, it is a proper level 20 campaign book that you get to play all sorts of enemies that a lot of times you struggle to maybe put into an encounter. Some enemies that could be big bads for like homebrew campaigns. You have so many fights in here that are just amazing fights. It is epic. It is a cinematic. The first chapter of this book is this massive battle that takes place across multiple locations, culminating in this big dragon battle, and it's a whole like non-stop battle. It's intense. There's a chance for it, depending on how your players did throughout the campaign. There's a chance for like an NPC to come in, really kind of helps save the day against this really tough enemy. You face all sorts of enemies throughout this entire book. Gonna spoil some of these between Marrowless demons, pit lords, battlers, demons, I can't remember the name of it. The Tazentil. It's like the Aztec creature that is like the harbinger of the end of the world. I forget the name of it right now. I had to learn it when I was playing it. So all these different cool encounters, big CR 20 plus battles. My only caveat to why this book isn't perfect in my opinion is the final encounter leaves you wanting. The final encounter is weak. It is a weak encounter. I homebrewed some elements to the encounter to make it more interesting, and even with the additional elements, it wasn't much more better. They could have done a bit better with that encounter, in my opinion. So if you exclude the final battle, everything else is just juicy. The final battle kind of is a big letdown, I'll be honest. But overall, this book is so fun to play with all the different battles. Each battle is intense. You have players getting to hit level 19, level 20. Not only do they hit level 20, they hit level 20 in the book, which means they get to actually use the level 20 stuff for a while, as opposed to hitting level 20 like just before the final battle. So you get to actually use some of this stuff to actually feel powerful. And that's a really cool thing as well. So between that, everything else, book 6, Broken Promise, is my favorite book of Age of Ashes. Did you guys play Age of Ashes? Did you have different order for what books you like or didn't like? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm definitely curious to see what you guys' thoughts are on that. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video talking about the Age of Ashes campaign. And if you like more of these type of videos, also let me know down in the comments, because I have gone through many adventure paths, either physically ran through them or read through them, and can, rank different campaigns. So let me know, and thank you guys for watching this video.